Entry 2. I do not begin with a face because faces are theater. They perform for cameras, for courtrooms, for pity. They rehearse their last lines without knowing them. I begin with sound, the scrape of a shoe on concrete, the small metallic complaint of keys being fumbled, the breath caught when a brain recognizes another presence it cannot authorize. He closed the plant at 2240. Routine. Lights off, locks checked, a pause at the door to collect the workday into a shoulder. Men like him move through life with mechanical punctuality and moral imprecision. They make small compromises and disguise them as pragmatism. Those compromises tell you more than any confession. I had watched him for 6 nights. Observation is not voyeurism, it is data collection. Where he paused, where he straightened a hat, how often he glanced at the delivery truck. These were not clues to me so much as coordinates. I prefer tracks that are honest because they do not require interpretation. A man who is honest about his routine gives you mathematics. A gambler gives you improvisation. I prefer equations. The act itself is the least interesting part. There is a narrow corridor of instruction that ends each life without extraneous theater. Placement of hands, pressure economy, the angle that convinces compliance instead of resisting. I do not need the scream. I do not want to catalog the flailing. The efficient ending is a geometry lesson. The body obeys if you ask it politely and precisely. Afterward, I sat with him for a long time. There is a silence that follows correctness, a sort of professional quiet. Once it pulsed like a reward. Tonight it was only a calibration, another instance in a long series. I cataloged the variables mentally. Time of death, ambient temperature, distance to nearest camera, likelihood of a witness. I left the scene dressed in the city's clothes, anonymous, inconspicuous, the preferred shape of vanishing. I tell these things because someone will read them someday. Perhaps that someone will be a student of method or a bureaucrat who misapplies pattern to humanity. That is acceptable. But this document is for me. It is where I measure my architecture. There are no trophies. There are only margins, the space between the act and the world's notice. Tonight the margin is wide. I thought I would feel relief. I felt only the old, hollow satisfaction of competence. Competence has its own sound. It is not triumph or applause, but a faint internal click, the way a lock recognizes its key. The first kill in any sequence always feels slightly off balance, not because of fear, but because calibration requires a test subject. He was a suitable test, one of the oblivious, my preferred classification. They move through the world without resistance, without the dignity of suspicion. The oblivious are convenient. They gift you time. There are others, of course. The performers who sense the narrative potential of their own deaths and try to shape it. Pleas, bargains, small autobiographies spoken into the dark. And the resistors whose bodies are uncooperative laboratories where strength and panic fight for the same space. They exhaust you. I choose the oblivious when I need clarity. He smoked menthols. The scent lingers differently in the air, mint folded inside chemical winter. When he exhaled, it came out in thin sheets, precise enough to trace wind direction. I remember thinking, he organized even his vices. Predictable men believe that schedule protects them from randomness. They are wrong. It only creates an accurate map of where they'll die. In the minutes before contact, I counted 4 in, 4 out. The same ritual from childhood, inherited without ceremony. It slows the pulse, divides time into solvable fractions. My thumb brushed the switchblade once, habit, not anxiety. The metal held the ambient temperature of the night, cooler than skin, but warmer than guilt. When he bent to tie a lace, the world aligned itself like a diagram. There's always that brief harmony before an equation resolves. The sound of his body against the asphalt was soft, almost disappointed. Blood arrived discreetly, obedient to gravity. I knelt, not to watch, but to confirm completion. I've never believed in savoring. To savor is to introduce error. Instead, I watched the steam rise from the wet patch near his collar, a private weather system collapsing into air. The silence afterward was mathematical, subtraction rendered audible. For a moment I listened for something. Sirens, a stray pedestrian, conscience. But the street was the kind that the city forgets after midnight. Sodium lights flickered in long intervals, the hum of transformers counting seconds for me. The city is the best accomplice. It mistakes stillness for rest. Inside the plant, I had left the security monitor running on loop so that any later observer would see only repetition. The footage would betray nothing new, only the comfort of sameness. Most crimes reveal themselves by change. Erase change, and you erase detection. When I rose, the scent of iron met the faint sweetness of cut grass. They canceled each other beautifully. I wiped the blade on his sleeve, a gesture that felt less like cleaning and more like closing a parenthesis. Competence requires exit rehearsed as thoroughly as entry. I traced my route backward through the geometry of the lot, shadow to pillar, pillar to truck, truck to fence. Every footstep was pre-counted, every corner memorized for the timing of cameras that sweep like slow pendulums. The trick is not invisibility, it's synchronization. Move when the eye blinks. A cat watched me from a trash skip, its pupils lantern wide. It made no sound. Animals rarely protest the removal of one of their own kind. They understand culling as a civic duty. When I passed, it blinked once, unafraid. I took that as confirmation. The act had maintained ecological balance. The walk home was uneventful, which is how success should feel. Streetlights marked distance like metronomes. My shadow elongated and contracted in regular rhythm. I listened to my own footsteps to test if guilt had weight. It did not. Guilt is a social echo. It requires an audience. At home, I performed the only indulgence I allow, cleanliness. The sink hissed awake, water running until its temperature matched neutrality. Soap foamed in my palms, the scent sharp, antiseptic. I scrubbed under the nails until the skin protested. 4 in, 4 out. The hum returned. When the drain swallowed the last pink swirl, I felt the night seal itself. I sat by the window afterward. The city exhaled its late shift. Trucks, distant sirens, a single radio playing news no one listens to. I tried to locate the precise moment when satisfaction fades into absence. It is shorter each year. The interval shrinks like breath on glass. Perhaps that is entropy's truest form, not decay but diminishing returns. I do not keep souvenirs. Souvenirs are interruptions of silence. I keep only the architecture, the pattern of entry and exit, the measurements that turn chaos into form. My ledger is invisible, yet exact. If you are reading this someday, understand. The first cut is not about blood. It is about the measurement between intent and completion, the width of time it takes for thought to become irreversible. Everything after is merely proof that the equation still works. Tonight, it worked perfectly. That should comfort me. Instead, it reminds me that precision, left unchallenged, eventually becomes its own boredom. Tomorrow I will walk the route again, not out of remorse, but to listen for what remains. If the silence greets me in the same tone as before, I will know the world has accepted another correction. And if the silence has changed pitch, if it hums higher, expectant, then perhaps it is asking for something new, something different.